I don't know about you, but lately I have been seeing a lot of things in my feed about overconsumption, and then just as many videos criticizing overconsumption. A lot of these are in totally different niches than we're in. It could be food, it could be beauty, it could be health. In the yarn community, we have been dealing with this for a while. So today I want to talk to you about the overconsumption in the yarn community, but why consumption is still necessary. And if you are like, Shannon, what are you talking about? I looked up the definition of overconsumption, and it just means consuming something to excess and the excessive use of resources. Now, I think what we're most familiar with is seeing like huge yarn hauls and gigantic yarn stashes, and then other people coming in and criticizing people for having yarn or for purchasing yarn. And don't get me wrong, there are plenty of potential problems with overconsumption. I've got 5 of them I'll go over super duper quick here. The first problem can be financial. So obviously, if you are purchasing things on credit to be able to afford them, that can put you in a financial hardship. Prioritization, if you're over prioritizing yarn purchases as opposed to other things that you or your family might need instead, or things that might benefit your family more. And while I don't think any of us are forgetting to buy our kids' school lunch to buy yarn, it could be things like a family vacation or like being able to afford a little more car every month. There's tons of different ways. I'm not getting into all that right here. Storing all of your yarn can totally be a problem. I am an empty nester and we live in a 3-bedroom house. So here is my yarn room, but it's a guest room. And I keep all of my yarn in a closet. And then I recently did upgrade to an over-the-door storage center and then also some storage cubes. And I had a guest here recently and she didn't have any complaints about this amount of yarn being here in the room. But you know, if my guest had to sleep on an air mattress down in the living room when I have this extra bedroom here, that would be a problem. Another problem with overconsumption can be the chaos of not having any storage or not having adequate storage for it. So if yarn is everywhere on your floor, and don't get me wrong, I occasionally have that happen here where if I do buy stuff and then I show it here, I just leave it on the floor and walk out. But I am trying to get better about that. And to be honest, my over-the-door storage has helped a lot, just freeing up a little more space for me to put things while I'm working on them. But for me, having a chaotic living space really affects me as far as just like my general mental health and well-being and productivity. If my eyes are darting all over the place, just seeing, you know, clutter and chaos everywhere, it kind of wears me down a little bit. And then the 5th potential problem that I'm going to talk about here today with overconsumption would be the fact that oftentimes it can lead to buying multiples of something. So on a personal note, I was recently helping with a loved one who needed a space cleared out. And this person, while being very well-meaning, had lost control over their space. And what I found in this case, this person wasn't buying yarn, it was books. But I found multiple copies of the same book, and I found it with multiple different books. And it was something where these were brand new books. You know, these weren't used books. These were brand new, being ordered several times because they were either lost and couldn't be found, or because there was just so many that they didn't even remember that they had purchased it. So that can happen with us and our yarn and lead us to having way too much of something, or just not being able to direct that budgeted yarn money towards something else that we could be using because we keep thinking we need the same thing over and over. Now, I did feel myself falling into this overconsumption trap. And what I'll do is I will link a video up here where I was kind of battling that over the summer and just kind of the circumstance in which it kind of reared up and how I had to address it. But if you're not interested in watching that, I believe a lot of my problems related to overconsumption boil down to growing up with a scarcity mentality and being afraid that I wouldn't be able to procure these items ever again. And for me, it was most prevalent during clearance sales. So I found myself for a few years there being, I wouldn't call it addicted, but I was very concerned with getting myself to that annual Hobby Lobby clearance sale, because if you haven't been to there, it is amazing. And I'm not here to talk about the pros and cons of shopping at Hobby Lobby. I'm not getting into that. But if you are someone who, like me, is in an area where you don't have a lot of yarn stores available and you certainly don't have any LYSs, then on top of that, you might be on a budget as well. You might not have a lot to really devote to a yarn budget. And when these yarns get clearanced out because they're discontinued, they immediately go to 75% off the marked price. And I just found that for me, these sales were a really, really great opportunity to get yarns that were a nice quality for some of them like even cheaper than the Dollar Tree sells yarn. So like $1.24 instead of the $1.25 at Dollar Tree. And as someone who was really working on building up their yarn stash and getting it where they wanted and learning what they liked, it was important for me to get there, but it caused some issues. I was like having mild anxiety. Will I get there? Will there be any good yarns? I live an hour away, so I can't just pop in after work and just check it out to see if the sale has started. So I would call the store and be like, has the sale started? Things like that. And it just got to be something where I had to address head on and deal with the issues and the uncomfortableness of why I was feeling that way. I'll have the video linked and I'll have it below. It'll be down below too if you want to check that out and dive a little bit deeper into that. Because based on that video, I am definitely not the only person who is trying to recover from a scarcity mentality. So some of the triggers that I found were watching other people's yarn hauls. So when that Hobby Lobby sale was going on, I didn't watch any videos on what people had gotten. Even my friends' videos that I watched all the time, I didn't watch any of them just because I didn't want that to trigger me. And I stayed away as well from all of the shop with me's where people were going into Hobby Lobby and seeing if the sale had started or not, what yarn was there, what was marked down, that type of stuff, because it just like activated that fear of missing out in me. And the same thing applies to videos where you're just seeing hauls, just general hauls, or just shop with me's where it's like, oh, let's go into whatever store and see what's in there today. And I also found myself like in the beginning of further towards the beginning of my crochet journey, I did find myself watching a lot of hauls because it's how I was learning about yarn. Like my friend did an amazing job of like teaching me how to crochet and helping me with like all the basics and the fundamentals and the stitches. But when it came to like different weights of yarn and different fiber types and all of that stuff, I was watching a lot of hauls just to see, because I didn't even know like what was available, what was out there. So it was helpful for me to learn. But then it started seeming like all of these like hauls that were hundreds of dollars was normal. While it may be normal for some different YouTubers based on the type of channel that they have, if they're doing tons of tutorials or if they also have a business where they're selling crochet, yes, they need to buy these enormous hauls. But for the average person, those size of hauls just were not normal or are not normal. And it kind of like messes with your mind a little bit and you start thinking like, oh, people just spend $250 or $300 on yarn all the time. And that distortion of reality can definitely lead to overconsumption. Another thing I didn't know when starting out was that sales literally happen all the time. Like that one at Hobby Lobby does only happen once a year, but in general, in the yarn industry, sales are literally happening all the time. A lot of online retailers have like maybe one or two specific really big sales per year, but there's always sales going on everywhere. And I didn't know that. And so I kind of felt like by watching all these videos about the sales, signing up for all these emails and checking the emails and clicking on the emails, I felt like I needed to do that to get the very best deals, when in reality, there's always going to be deals waiting for you. And the other trigger for me was new yarns. I guess at this point, as it's getting closer to a decade that I have been really crocheting and enjoying yarn and all that, I'm realizing now that while sometimes new yarns do come out, that there isn't really anything like that revolutionary being made. You know, there might be new colors updated, new prints updated, new glitters in it, you know, different things like that. But going back, just in this time frame, I can see where a lot of stuff is so very similar. And also, if you go on like yarn substitutions, you can see that a lot of times there are very good substitutes for other yarns, meaning that, you know, they're kind of copies of each other. And there really isn't that like, how do I want to say this? Like that strong need to go out and find the latest new thing. So if you are kind of feeling like that, stick around till the very end of the video, and I'm gonna like circle back and touch on that again. So yes, overconsumption can 100% lead to lots of different problems. And believe me, I know I have oversimplified this list. I'm sure that if you were to just type it into YouTube or Google, oh my gosh, you would be inundated with videos and articles and blog posts and everything about how bad overconsumption is. But number one, I wanted to keep this yarn related. And number two, I think consumption is necessary. So I hope you stick around at this point and give me a chance to defend some yarn consumption. That is almost hard to say, yarn consumption. Okay, very, very, very basic fact is if you are not consuming different types of yarn, you're never going to know what you like to work with. You're also going to need to consume patterns for different types of projects. When I started out, I was pretty much just making blankets. I was scared of doing wearables. If you follow me regularly, you'll know like I pretty much only do wearables for myself now. But the types of yarn that you need to purchase are going to be based on what project it is. You know, what are you trying to accomplish with this? There are definite pros and cons to different types of yarn. Some things you are going to want a very basic acrylic. Some things you might want a very durable wool. Some things you might want very silky. And you're not going to know what types of projects you like to do and what types of yarn you want to work with. Like I said, I started out watching a bunch of hauls to really get into yarn and learn about it. And I had seen a very popular YouTuber, you know, stating like, oh, I only like these type of yarns. I don't like this type of yarn. And not knowing much about it, I kind of took that at face value. Like, oh, they know what they're talking about. And this is what I should like too. But it wasn't until I really started venturing out and trying different things that I learned I kind of like the opposite of that person. I like different type of projects. I like different types of yarn. Like this hat is so simple. I'll have a video linked up here where I just have like the simplest instructions for a beanie ever, and I'll have that link. But I made this one out of fingering weight yarn, and while the pattern is, it could not be simpler, a very very beginner could do this pattern, it did take quite a bit longer because I made it in fingering weight. But I absolutely love how it looks. I love the fingering weight yarn in the beanie way more than a worsted weight. And that's just personal preference. But had I have not given it a try and bought a different yarn and kind of gone out on a limb, I would not have known that I love this for a beanie. And pretty much I can safely say that from here on out, unless I'm doing something specific for something, if I'm making more beanies for myself, I'm going to be buying like probably a 1 or 2 weight yarn because I really love the look of it. The second reason that you need to be consuming yarn and purchasing yarn and that you cannot skimp is because you need enough yarn to make projects. So I think it is human nature, if you are trying to cut back on things and not spend as much, not bring as much yarn into your home, you might be like, oh, I'll just buy 1 skein of this, or I might buy 2 skeins of this. And then the problem is you don't have enough of it to make a project. And some of this does come with experience as well, of knowing like how much yarn you're going to need for a given project based on the weight of it. And that might sound overwhelming, but like I know for this particular hat, the skeins that I got of, this is Stroll Tweed from Knit Picks, I want to say there's about 260 yards of this fingering weight. And I used about 1.5 skeins to make this beanie. Now this yarn is not designated for a beanie here. I'm going to make a shawl out of this, but this is also a fingering weight yarn. It's Supernova, and this has 475 yards in it. So just knowing what I would need to do a beanie, I would know like, okay, I can definitely make one out of this and have just a tiny bit left over. And based on some other experience making a shawl, I know like out of fingering weight yarn that I can definitely get one out of about 800 or 900 yards. So I picked up 2 of them instead of convincing myself that I could get by with just the 1, because I have made that mistake. And I've got some yarns in there that are basically just going to have to go towards making beanies because I bought them either on clearance or whatever and they're not available anymore and I just have the 1. But don't make that mistake of buying the least amount possible just because you don't want to spend or you don't want to bring more into your house. Make sure that you're buying enough to do a project that you enjoy doing. Otherwise, I kind of see just buying the 1 as overconsumption if you buy it and bring it home and it never gets used. The third reason you need to be consuming yarn is because I 100% believe that having a healthy yarn stash actually saves you money. I've done a bunch of videos in the past on why I think it's important to have a yarn stash, and I think I'm going to do like an updated video, more of a deep dive on what I would purchase if I was starting my yarn stash like from zero. But the main reason that I think that we should all have a yarn stash. Now, it can be different size based on what your needs are and everything like that, but I live fairly rurally and the closest store to me is still a good 45 minutes to an hour away. So if inspiration hits, I'm here at my house. Now, not everyone lives like that, and I totally get it. So a couple of the other reasons is basically because having yarns at your home that you love and you know you will use is going to save you money. I think a lot of times I've used the analogy of your yarn stash as very much like the pantry in your kitchen, where if you have ingredients on hand to make something, you don't have to run to the store, because how many times have we ran to the store just to get 1 or 2 things and then you end up walking the aisles and picking up other things that you don't need just because maybe you're hungry or it's a moment of weakness. And that can basically apply to the yarn store as well. I mean, you wouldn't be hungry, but you could be, ready to start a new project and not know what that project is and then start grabbing things that look beautiful. And then I think one of the biggest traps for overconsumption is buying things that we don't need because of a free shipping minimum. how many stores are there that send emails that, the subject says free shipping in like bold letters, and then you get in and it's with a $35 minimum, $49 minimum, $75 minimum. And I think because in general, yarn is kind of a low cost item, relatively, you can definitely get skeins of yarn for less than the cost of shipping a lot of times. I know one time I ordered yarn from Hirschner's and it was like $12 shipping. I didn't have a deal on that at all. I think one time when I was looking and it was like estimating potential price for me to order from Premier, it was like $20, different things like that. And while I would absolutely love to try some different Premier yarns, I'm just not in a position because I haven't tried enough and I don't know enough about them to know which ones I like, that I'm not willing to spend $75 in yarn to get the free shipping. But to bring it back to where I was going with that initially is that, a lot of times skeins of yarn are less than the cost of shipping. So in our minds, it's easy to be like, okay, well, I have to spend this, otherwise I'm just throwing this money away. I'm trying to figure out how I can explain this better. So I was placing an order on Kohl's. So I had some Kohl's cash I was trying to use up. So the items I was purchasing was below their threshold for free shipping. Basically, what I did then was I was like $10 shy of hitting that free shipping mark. Well, I had looked and the cost of shipping, if it was like $5, I'd be like, whatever, maybe. But it was going to be, like I said, I think it was about $12 to ship to my house. And so basically I found a $10 item, which was, basically what I needed to hit that threshold. And it was still less than the price of shipping or whatever. And it all kind of equaled out. So I ended up buying a 4-pack of Burt's Bees chapstick, which I use. I have a chapstick everywhere. So don't be afraid that was an overconsumption purchase. But you know what? Like for that, it wasn't a big deal. But if you only needed $40 in yarn to spend another $35 in yarn to get you to the free shipping mark, that's where the overconsumption goes in there, because you didn't go into it wanting or needing that much. It's just the trap of the free shipping. And then the fourth reason that I think you should be consuming yarn is for inspiration. And my friend Carrie Penny over at A Happy Crafty Homemaker has a great video on having a yarn stash and inspiration being such a huge reason for having it. And she explains it so well. I'm going to go ahead and link her video below if you want to go check that out. But for so many people, it is very hard to just get inspired, looking at something online or just looking at patterns. And it isn't until you walk into, or walk in front of your shelves, or in my case, walk into my little closet and see that yarn and see the colors and feel the textures, that you can really get that inspiration to create something beautiful. So your brain might need that yarn in hand in order to really be inspired and figure out what to do with it. So again, if that sounds a little vague, check out Carrie Penny's video. So what can you do if you feel yourself slipping into overconsumption? Like I said, this summer I was battling it and I was really on that fence. Like, what am I going to do? Am I going to participate in going to this sale and try to track down these deals? Or am I going to let it just float by me? What am I going to do? Because I did feel it pulling at me, and I felt like there was a huge chance that I was going to be purchasing things just because they were so inexpensive. So if you're feeling yourself slip into overconsumption and you're aware that you're doing it and you want to stop, I want to encourage you to take these couple steps. So the first one is going to be just to stop where you're at and analyze your motives. So are you doing it because it is cheap? Are you doing it because of like the FOMO? Everyone else is buying this yarn. I'm seeing everyone else make stuff with it. I'm seeing everyone haul this. I need it too. What are your motives? Maybe it's not overconsumption. Maybe you are like, I use a ton of brown cotton yarn and I am low on brown cotton yarn and I know I'm going to use it probably for 4 projects this year and this sale is a great opportunity. That's not overconsumption. But generally speaking, if it's that fear of missing out or that altered sense of reality based on like everyone else is spending this much money, that's probably overconsumption. So stop what you're doing and see what your motives are. Do you really want / need this, or are you being influenced by outside sources? Before I go any further, let me take a little sidestep here and just address like the elephant in the room. Am I a giant hypocrite for telling you not to be influenced by these items and hauls and projects and all this other stuff, whilst simultaneously posting affiliate links to products? Me personally, I would never want you to spend more than you can comfortably spend. I don't want you filling your room needlessly. If you see a product that I'm using and you absolutely love it and know it would be great for you, then I want to point you in the right direction to get the product. And the reality is you don't make a ton of money off of affiliate links. Some of the like really good affiliate programs might offer 10%. Otherwise, 5 can be very standard. Sometimes it's as low as 3 or 2 or even 1%. So it isn't something where I don't think anyone here in the Yarny community is getting rich off of affiliate links. I'm going to be honest, if I'm putting a video together and I have an opportunity to link a product for you, I'm going to do it just because it's part of the business model. If you are wanting to be a YouTuber and you are wanting to turn this into a side hustle that, you know, can make it profitable, make it worth it, then that's one of the avenues and options for a little bit more income, especially if there's a good chance viewers would buy it anyway. If a person is taking time to make the video and they're already going to be linking different yarns or products or different things for you, I really don't think there's anything wrong with just taking it to that next step and adding an affiliate link, because it does take time. When you go into someone's description box and they've taken the time to list out all those products and show you where to get them and show you how the product works and what it looks like as a finished product, I really don't think there's anything wrong with them making $1 or $2 off of that. So you can definitely have your own opinion about whether or not you think it is hypocritical, discourage you from overconsumption, but also simultaneously list affiliate links. So what can you do if you are looking around your yarn room right now, or your living room, or wherever, and you're like, oof, okay, I've definitely fallen into overconsumption. What in the world do I do now? How I would combat this, and to be honest, I did combat this a little bit. I ended up filling up several bags of yarn for my friend's granddaughters of things that were like brightly colored, like neons and stuff, where like I thought they were super pretty and they were on clearance and I was like, oh, this is beautiful. But then I realized I'm never going to wear this. Like, it doesn't really work with my color scheme. Like, it's just not me. What I did in order to be able to gift those yarns to those girls is I made out a list of all of the attributes that I absolutely loved in yarn. So this was like color, this was fiber, texture, weight, and really looked at the yarns in my yarn stash with a critical eye. Immediately then, I was able to start 3 different piles. And this might be something that takes time. This might take you a year to go through, and that's okay. Just start where you are. Start with 1 shelf. Start with one tote, whatever. Start 3 piles. So it's going to be absolutely like, I love it pile. I can't wait to use this pile, where it does fit all of those requirements of all the things that you love in a yarn. Like, you own that yarn. Like, don't feel guilty about owning it. Like, you love it. It fits all the criteria. It is the perfect yarn for you. So put that aside and don't give it another thought, because that is the perfect yarn for you. The next pile is going to be stuff that is like the opposite of that. So for me, it was those neons. It was a lot of big twist value in neons, and I do love big twist value, but since then I've gotten like a lot more like autumnal and earthy tones. So it was all of the opposite things. There's blanket yarn. I've realized I just don't like it. I don't like the thickness. I don't like the tension I use when I'm using it. It's just not for me. I would rather use a fingering weight yarn. It's like easy on my hands. It doesn't cause strain. And so I knew like there was yarns right away that were just the opposite of what I wanted. And so those immediately went in another pile. And then it left me with maybe yarns, like yarns that kind of fit some of the attributes, but maybe there's a little bit holding me back. And what I say is, throw them in a separate tote or bag or shelf or whatever and revisit that later. Don't force yourself to make a decision on that. It's hard enough to go through and look at things critically. So just put that aside for a different day and come back to it on a day where you're only addressing that specific tote or whatever. So you're not faced with tons of other decisions kind of that can cause decision fatigue. Like, just focus when your mind feels fresh and clean and refreshed, and you can go into it with a little bit more objective eyes. But then the last thing is finding the right solution to those yarns that do not suit you. So obviously you can donate them. I'm kind of on the fence on that one, because I don't like a lot of times how thrift stores price their yarns. Like, a lot of times they have no clue what they're doing. And they're not pricing it appropriately. And there are a lot of thrift stores where I just don't feel like my priorities align with their priorities. I have one kind of in my area that is really amazing, and they price things to sell and no one gets paid there. It's all volunteers and all the money stays local. So I could donate yarn to that place and feel good about it. But like I said, I am kind of on the fence about the yarn donations. So you can give your yarn away, and sometimes that can be tough, and it definitely requires finding the right person or organization to give it to. Like I said, I've got these teenage girls, not mine, my friends, and they are just learning crochet and knit and loving it, and they're in a great time to experiment, but they're in high school and they're in sports and music and don't have jobs, so their finances are limited. So in a way, yes, while this is money I have spent and will never see again, I feel good that I am able to bless those girls with it and help them out and encourage them to really get more into yarn and crochet and knit. You know, maybe there's another type of organization in your area if you don't know anyone personally. You know, is there a care center? I mean, there's all sorts of options for you to really look into with a place that you can feel good about giving it to. You could also, if you have a lot of yarny people that you know when you're in real life, see if anyone wants to trade. My friend and I frequently like trade yarn with each other. It's not like an official trade, but I'll be like, do you want this? She'll ask me, do you want this? And I'll be like, yeah, do you want this instead? You know, things like that. And then you can also sell it. And that might be honestly the best opportunity for you to recoup some of your expenses. You'll want to do plenty of research on where you want to sell it, that type of stuff, how you want to sell it, how you want to list it. Do you want to sell it in person somewhere, like on Facebook Marketplace? Do you want to throw it up on another site like Etsy or eBay? those are things you need to research yourself with what's best for your situation, but it's a great opportunity if you feel like maybe you have overspent and need to recoup some of that money. Now, if you have gotten rid of some of this yarn and you're looking around and you're like, ooh, I still have a lot of yarn, then what I would encourage you to do is just give yourself a timeline and say, you know what, I'm not going to buy any yarn this month, or I'm not going to buy any yarn this quarter, or I'm not going to buy any yarn for 6 months. I kind of don't like the pressure of saying it's a no-buy year, because I feel like, to me, that's like when you have to go on a diet and you're like, you can't have any carbs or whatever. It's like immediately if you tell me I can have none of it, I want some of it. So be mindful of that. But if you can set a timeline that's doable for you and just be like, I am 100% going to work from my stash for the next couple months. And at that point, reevaluate. Did you do good? Did you really even feel the urge to buy more yarn since you were working out of your stash? Can you extend that a couple more months? Just kind of keep going like that. If you've gone a little while and maybe there is an amazing sale on a yarn you love, evaluate it. Like, should I buy some of this? Have I used up more of this? Which totally leads us into this next point of where do you go from here? So if you were on the verge of over-consuming, or you have found that you did over-consume yarn, how do you go about purchasing from here on out? Because we need to be mindful. So again, you've got that list of your favorite yarn attributes. So we need to be mindful of that and keep that in mind going forward. Not only that, but what types of projects do you like to do? Narrowing that down is going to make a huge difference on the types of yarn that you are willing to buy and bring into your home. And realistically, who are the recipients of things that you're going to make? Is it mostly just you? Is it you and a spouse, you and a child? It could be anything, but knowing who your recipients are is going to make a huge difference and stop us from that just in case type of purchasing. And the very last thing that you should consider when you're looking at purchasing yarn after you've dealt with the overconsumption is, do you have something in your stash that is very similar? I love earthy, warm, chocolatey, caramel, tobacco-y type of colors. And what I do know is that since I'm very attracted to these same type of colors, it is very easy for me to put something in my online cart and then not realize like, oh, I have something that's maybe just like one shade darker, one shade lighter. And in reality, it's probably not going to make any difference whatsoever in the project if I use this one I'm looking at or the one from my stash. Like, someone else's eye might not even be able to tell the difference. But I'm like, oh, this is milk chocolate, and this is chocolate, and this is dark chocolate. This is 3 different yarns. And, the average person wouldn't notice. That is where either A, keeping things very organized in your yarn area is important, or if you are a naturally organized person, keeping an inventory, and even better than that, like an online inventory that you can reference when you're out to see if you would basically be purchasing a duplicate or a near duplicate. Towards the beginning of the video, I said, hang on, there's something I'm going to touch back on later on. And that is, like, if you find yourself kind of losing that joy, or maybe feeling like a little bit burnt out when it comes to like yarn sales or yarn flyers or all of that different stuff, I think that's something important to talk about as far as overconsumption goes as well. I think a lot of us have hobby jumped. And it's totally easy to do. And I think it's important, if you have invested in your yarn stash and invested your time to learning a skill, to really stay active in it and stay excited about it, because it could be very disappointing if you might have like hundreds or even thousands of dollars wrapped up in that hobby, and then it just sits there for 10 years and then you get rid of it all. Just an example. example, I know for me lately, I haven't really been very excited about any of the emails I'm getting about sales. And when I go to that town that I go to, get groceries and all that stuff, I haven't stopped in at the yarn stores. I haven't gone over to the yarn department when I'm at Walmart to check it out. And I found like it has been a little less exciting for me lately. But I'm not ready to give up on crochet at all. I think honestly, it just means it's time to evolve just a little bit. And that can mean a couple different things. It could mean that it's time for you to maybe change. I'm hesitant to use the term quality, but maybe it's time to graduate a little bit. Like, I know for a very long time, I was concerned with like getting the most yarn I could for my money. So I do have a lot of big twist value, and I love big twist value, but I have found that when I changed the projects I was making for to be more Shannon centric, like stuff that I want to wear, it did tend to lean more towards wools and finer weight wools. So that kind of like rekindles some of that excitement to be like, ooh, maybe I don't need to be buying as much yarn as possible. If I have $30 to spend on yarn, yes, I could buy 10 big twist values if they're on sale for $2.99. Or I could buy, let's see, what would these are normally about like $6 a piece, or could I get 5 of this stroll tweed from Knit Picks, and have a project that I am a little more excited about doing because it fits more of the things that I'm looking for. It would be a finer weight. It would be wool instead of acrylic. It would be like more, it would be warmer, but it would be more breathable. Could I work on more intricate stitch patterns because of the finer weight? And that can be a way to get a little bit more excited, is to just evolve the yarn and the projects you're working on. I have definitely felt lately like I'm just not as excited about some of the different yarns and the new yarns that are coming out. I did buy this big twist value in this one. I think it's called Merry Mingle, because I saw it and I saw somebody work it up and it was really, really cute. So I did buy this. I've made a hat already. I am still working on a scarf, and that did excite me enough to purchase it. But in general, a lot of the stuff, I'm like, I have stuff that's similar. It's just nothing new. So I got to thinking, how am I able to procure yarn that is everything I love? So a couple different ways. You might have heard me say before that I am in the process of collecting supplies to start dyeing some yarn. So Knit Picks has bare yarn that you can buy, and you can buy it in mini skeins, you can buy it in regular skeins for you to dye. You can also get the different jacquard dyes on there. So I will, in that non-hypocritical way, put links down here in the description box to those products if you are interested in doing that. I have the yarn and I have the dyes, but I need a few of the, I need a metal pot, I need some metal dishes, some metal tongs, some things that are strictly just for dyeing and never to be used with food again. So I'm collecting those so I can learn how to make yarn that is like 100% Shannon, the colors, the fiber, everything. And I've also started spinning some yarn. I bought a drop spindle, and I've bought some different fibers. And if you're interested in that, since I'm a little further in the process, definitely feel free to subscribe if that's something you want to learn more about. I'm not turning this into a spinning channel by any means. I do not have the expertise to do that, but I will have a video coming out shortly where I show you all of the different spinning supplies that I have purchased, because your girl's a bargain shopper. So along with this video and the theme of this, I did not want to overspend. So instead of jumping in and buying a $600 spinning wheel before I knew if I liked spinning, I started with a drop spindle. So I've got, you know, maybe $100 worth of supplies here that I can show you what I got if you want to give that a try. That'll be coming up. But that's something again where I was like, man, I want to make yarn that I'm like really freaking excited about. And that's a way I can do it, is getting fiber and spinning it into yarn. Now I can see where buying fiber could be just as addicting as buying yarn, 100%. So I know I'm going to be very meaningful or very mindful of that in the future as well. But if you don't want to try dyeing or spinning, I would encourage you, if you're feeling a little blah about yarn and whether you knit or crochet or whatever, I would encourage you to try a slightly different yarn hobby. And you don't have to spend a lot. Maybe if you're a crocheter, you want to learn knitting. Just ask a knitter, like, what are some really affordable knitting needles and what would be a great size to buy? Like if you've got a lot of big twist value in your stash, it'll tell you on here. And I don't have my reading glasses. So what is it? It says 5mm US 8 knitting needles. I'm not a knitter, so I don't know what that means, but I'm pretty sure that you could get a set of knitting needles fairly inexpensively at Joann or probably on Amazon or wherever. And while they might not be heirloom pieces, it would be something that would be affordable enough, and you would be using yarn that's already in your stash. So, you know, probably for under $10, you could try out a different yarn related hobby and see if it's something you like without really spending much at all. You could also try Tunisian crochet. Again, I feel like for under $10, you could do the exact same thing. A set of Tunisian hooks and use up some of the yarn you've got. Buy the hooks based on the yarn size. Try that. Thank you for spending time with me during this deep dive, delving into overconsumption. I am super excited to be changing up a little bit of the videos I do. Let me know if you like this deep dive format or not. I will be trying out posting a little bit less, like once a week, just to be able to devote a little more time to the videos I am creating, because I do really appreciate you showing up and I appreciate you watching. I appreciate the interaction. I appreciate the comments. And also a special thank you to everyone who has joined my channel membership so far. Once again, thank you so much for talking yarn with me. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.